I'd like to continue the conversation about religion and science. So I think the most important point for me is that science and religion are not mutually exclusive. Not just in fields where they don't talk to each other, such as some would say things like morals, where religion has something to say about it, whereas science ostensibly doesn't, even though I think that's kind of not true, because science could have a lot to say about morals. If you look around the world and you see, symbiosis, or you see other types of relationships, everything is in relationship to each other, ecospheres, how the way things work, and feedback loops. So that that could be translated in a certain sense, and there are many philosophers, both in the religious realm and in the secular realm, who have dealt with this already. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. But for me, it's more about how how either justified on an intellectual sense is it to, I guess we can say, believe in God, because that's probably the most important underlying tenet of religion, that let's say an atheist or somebody of that sort, agnostic, I guess you could say, would take most fault with, because other things about religion, like let's say a commandment to do this or that, well, that just only follows from whatever the religion kind of went through, either the people or the formulators of it. So the question is can someone be just intellectually justified to believe in, is it intellectually justifiable to believe in God? And the first thing to point out is there are many obviously brilliant people who believe in God. So let's all just take a step back now and keep in mind that to raise your head between mountains, as the phrase is kind of like a silly thing to do. Like to say, oh well, I say there is no God. I mean, because look, how are you going to go up one-on-one against, let's say, Maimonides? Like you're not of his stature. On the other hand, of course there are, so to speak, mountains on the other side, such as, I mean, it's only fairly recently that atheism has any real advocates, but there are clearly geniuses on that side. Guys like Dawkins and Huxley and people like this. These are big intellectual heavyweights, and I wouldn't pretend to be such a genius as to take them on one-on-one. However, something very interesting I hear from them all the time is I see that most of these people, they keep missing a lot of like the thrust of what, let's say, Judaism is, okay? Because they are, as someone pointed out, they're Christian atheists, so if their atheism is like anti-Christian in many ways. It's not really anti-religion. If you listen to, let's say, Dawkins, you see like he totally has a Christian background, and he's attacking that, and whatever. I'm not going to get involved in that, but Judaism is very different. We're historical believers in God. We're not natural believers in God. Okay, so even though the I guess you could say, I don't know, closest word would, I guess, be the legend has it that Abraham, right, our forefather Abraham, he sort of looked around and decided that there's got to be one creator, because everything else seems to fall away, right? So if somebody's worshiping the sun goes down at night, and the moon, well, the moon goes down in the morning, and the wind and the fire and this, all these things kind of, there's at some point they're going to be overtaken by something else. And so he looks around and he says, okay, well, what if there's one force, one, what we call God controlling it all? And so supposedly this was at a very young age that he did this, and decided he's going to break all the idols. And okay, you can look inside the what we call the Midrash. So that was Abraham's belief in God, but it became something else. It became a relationship, okay? And the Jews believe in God, even though there's philosophical justification for belief in God. We don't believe in God from a philosophical standpoint, or because philosophy forces us to believe in God, but we believe in God because of historical reasons. That God saved the Jewish nation from slavery and made a pact with them, and they're going to tell their children, believe in God. God did good things for us, and we owe him one. We owe God our allegiance, right? So that's why Jews believe in God, because we owe allegiance to God, because God helped us. So you see, it's very different than being a natural philosopher, or being something like this. Now, Richard Dawkins said that that's petty. It's petty to have a God who has human interaction. I mean, come on, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, whether it's petty or not doesn't change whether or not it happened. And so I think the question can kind of devolve into something more that can be accurately dealt with, or more truthfully dealt with. And that is, do the Jews have a special relationship with God? I guess you could say that. I mean, that's what a Jew, right? Again, that's why a Jew believes in God. Not the philosophy of it is important, but you don't have to be a philosopher to believe in God. And there's, of course, right there, W.F. Albright, William Foxwell Albright, has his little book, the history of biblical characters, and he starts out by saying that there is no other nation in the world, no other body of literature really, that it has been so substantiated as Jewish literature, meaning the Bible and the rest. And that there's absolutely no reason to doubt the existence of the characters in the Bible, in as much as potentially some things could be argued over in some details or whatever, but the personalities themselves have been relatively well substantiated. And but I digress. I don't want to on one foot try to put in front of you the entire historical veracity of the Bible, but I just want to say that you have to really understand that the Jewish relationship with God is start as a personal, national one, and not a philosophical one, or in a certain sense empirical, right? So of course it's intellectually justified to believe in God, even when something like evolution could be shown to occur, and that's because belief in God has nothing, is in, at least in the Jewish realm, is not predicated on there being no evolution. Belief in God is not predicated in Judaism on there being a Big Bang or not. That there's of course there are some type of like there's little stories in there in the book of Genesis, how the world created, how the species arose. But come on, I said this in the first case. That's not blow by blow. That's not telling you exactly what happened. In fact, it's one of the Judaism considers it a mystery. Actually, they say there's the second chapter of tractate, Masechet Hagiga, the in the Mishnah, in the Jewish oral law, it says 4 questions don't bother too much getting into, and one of them is, how did the world get here? So the Jews don't say we have the answer. They say don't. It's kind of almost. It's something unanswerable. Won't get you too far. Now I'm sorry if this sounds a little unscientific for you, but in a certain sense, it rings very true. The average individual, right? The average person sitting around. It goes on to say that there are certain people who, if they understand things very well, you can get into it with them. But majority of people, don't bother yourself too much with the origins of the world. It's just going to tie your head in knots, kind of thing. And yeah, that's not a very kind of confident output, right? It's not saying, oh well, God created in 6 days, don't you know? That's not what it says there. It's not what the Jewish oral law says. All these things, all these fuzzy origin kind of questions are not terribly important to us, because we have a relationship with God. God took us out of Egypt. God, gave us a code of laws to live by. God, instilled prophets in our midst, and so on. Okay, so I think this is something that I want to make clear, that being a natural philosopher is good, and it could bring you to, it in its own right stands on a sure footing. If you arrive at the conclusion that there is a creator, that there is a designer, that's fine. People have dealt with it that way. On the other hand, you could see things in a different light and talk about natural selection, and that's fine too. That's definitely some type of an apparent feature of the world, and that's perfectly legitimate. And you know what? I don't think that would bother God in it at all if you would say that there's a natural selection and so on. That's why not? Where does it say anywhere in the Bible you're not allowed to say something like that? That's like to just attack somebody for saying it or not saying it. That's like not at all. I think important, like a central theme. But dealing with the history, dealing with the traditions, dealing with how did you get here and why, not in an origin sense, but in a national religious sense, I think that's something that we all have to deal with and grapple with. And it's as I said in the first segment, that's not something you can answer in a laboratory. It's something you have to actually immerse yourself in, actually involve yourself in order to arrive at some type of conclusion. So that's something important I wanted to say. And the next important thing I wanted to say is that there actually I have not right now things to say, so I'm just going to sign out. Be well.